app. So this evening, what we're going to be focusing on is learning unit 4. I haven't got finished marking the assignment, so don't panic on that front. That's why you won't see your marks up yet. I'll hopefully be finished with them tomorrow, and then we'll let them know, and then marks will be released hopefully by the end of the week. No panicking. Not unnecessary. Not unnecessary. Not necessary. So hopefully, what is today, Wednesday? Okay, so by early next week you'll have the marks. So it's coming. Okay. All right. So learning unit 4 onwards is what the focus of your POE will be. And for this particular learning unit, it's looking at media and culture and everything to do with that. Have you guys had an opportunity to work through learning unit 4 yet? And be honest, just so I know where I'm at with going through the content with you. I'm all for honesty, Sasha, so that's cool. All good, Dominique. Okay, that's fine. Then just when I know that you guys haven't, then it just means that I know to approach it from that. I totally get it. You don't need to be sorry. I totally understand. And I know life gets overwhelming, but so then let me just, rather than going with the idea that you have gone through it, I'm going to go with the idea that you haven't gone through it. And it just means changing the approach a bit, which is fun. All right. So the first thing that you guys need to be able to do is define culture and media. So media we've spoken about is what's all around us, but culture, that is the ideas, the customs, the social behavior of a group of people. So we all have our own culture. So for us, for South Africans, we have a South African culture, but then we also have things such as our Afrikaans culture, Zulu culture, Xhosa culture. So we have all these different cultures surrounding us, and internationally, you know, there's a very different culture if you are, say, German or Scandinavian or British or whatever. Everyone has their own culture, and I'm experiencing it firsthand at the moment. I've got family over from Germany, and there is a very definite culture between how we do things and how they do things. And it's not that one is right or wrong, it's just different ways of approaching things. And that is often reflected in our media, because we have a media culture, and that media culture is what kind of influences our opinions, our values, our way of seeing the world. So if you guys think about most of the movies that we engage with, a lot of them are from a Western perspective or focus on a Western culture. So, you know, for example, even though as a South African, I live in the Southern Hemisphere, obviously, but even with that, we still when we picture Christmas, we picture a white Christmas, because growing up, all the movies that we saw were all based on UK or US, and it's that quintessential white Christmas. All right. So it's that we often end up seeing and perceiving the world based on what the media tells us to think and what to look at. All right. So when you are focusing on this particular learning unit, you have to think about these two things. So media as culture and media as a reflection of culture. So when we're looking at these two separate areas, or these two separate concepts, it's that media can create culture. All right, and we're going to look at the idea of high, popular, and mass culture in a second. But the other thing is that the media is a reflection of our culture. So Black Panther is a brilliant example. To me, it still needs to have Black Panther, Chaz Boseman in it. Like, it just feels wrong with the new one. But the idea here is that we as society often don't get to see lots of different cultures. Again, it's that idea that most of the films that we see are showing a Western American perspective. But then when films such as Black Panther come out that show and reflect a different type of culture, so this being the African culture, so even the language used in Black Panther drew from Xhosa, and it was filmed in the Lesotho Highlands for the going into Wakanda, that is the Drakensberg, and it's that we are starting to see more films and more media that is being more reflective of everyday culture. Can you guys think of any films that are reflective of your more minority cultures, where before there wouldn't have been films on there? So it's not your stereotypical like white American culture. Yeah, Life of Pi is a good one. So it's wherever we see a different perspective, a different culture from the stereotypical modern society. So there's quite a few movies at the moment that are speaking to more Asian culture. There's more focus on K-pop music, which is a reflection of culture, but has also become media creating the culture. So it's just us being aware that the more that, KZN Productions as well, it's the fact that the more we actually show the different cultures within society means the more aware of what's going on around us. And that's really important because we want actual reflections of our cultures. So not like, so with the British, you end up getting quite stereotypical viewpoints of like the British culture, like often representing a lot of people within the series or films as being dumb or lower class, but British movies kind of don't fit that stereotypical norm of the American culture, which is so prominently pushed. But then we still have movies like The Holiday, which is still very American in its approach, but with a slight UK leaning. But yeah, when I think of a lot of the UK-based stuff, it is shifting and changing, but there's a lot of self mockery and that kind of thing within the British humor. And I just know this because I'm married to a Brit, so that's just my point of reference. All right, so I just want to get to the next. Sorry, I'm just jumping through slides to the ones that I just want to focus on. So I'm just going back to the slide navigator. It's just taking its sweet time. All right, so I just want to having a look here, just to reiterate. Okay. So you guys know what communication is. You guys all do ComSci. We know what our cultures are, so our shared values, beliefs, and norms. And how all the messages are put across are through different codes, different meanings that we put towards things. And the clear way that we see it, one of the most prominent ways, is through the representation of high, popular, and mass culture. So when I think high culture, I think Gossip Girl. That's what comes to mind for me. So it's that Upper East Side, creme de la creme. If you were in Europe, people that go to the Louvre to go and go and view all the paintings and Van Gogh Museum. Awesome, Sasha. So it's the elite, those that go to the opera, the ballet, and the high culture is very much based on your European and American perspectives of what was seen as upper class. So your noblemen, your kings, your queens, what they would deem as important. And it's for the elite. But then what often happens is that something in high culture can become popular and it loses interest with the elite. And that's when it becomes your pop culture. So it's what the everyday, ordinary person is interested in. So it's the dominant ideas, the taste or preferences within society. So whether it be a certain book genre, whether it be a type of music, whether it be your fashion, it's what becomes pop culture, what becomes part of our everyday life. So it's basically the music we listen to on radio stations, your all your stuff around like Taylor Swift's concerts, and if the even things like using Samsung or Apple products are a form of pop culture, because it kind of gets ingrained into us that is the it thing. And fashion is big in this, because obviously media and fashion go hand in hand. And we'll see in the high culture people will be wearing Gucci and Hermes and whatever it may be, where the pop culture it will be Nike and New Balance and the everyday stuff. All right. And often the pop culture is criticized by the high culture. They're like, oh, this is beneath us. We set the trends, we don't follow the trends. And then the last one is your mass culture. So this is when you have something that's consumed by many in society, where what is regarded as mass culture in one generation can be regarded as high in another. So things like your book conventions, your Comic Cons, your big food and wine festivals. It can be anything where a mass audience engages with it. So often, and in most instances, something starts within high culture and then it permeates down to society, especially because we try to, the everyday person with your pop culture and your mass culture, it is often trying to emulate some form of high culture, because we always are trying to be like that upper class elite group, even though we might not have the money to actually reach that status of high culture, because it's very, very few people are in that 1% of the 1% where all the money is. Okay, do those three make sense to you guys, this idea of high, popular, and mass culture? Okay, good, cool. All right, so just the other concepts I just want to go through with you guys. So I've gone through culture now, but the other two that are important for you to be aware of is ideology and hegemony. So now I know you've done ideology in comsci and other courses, but just to go through it in terms of media. So now media often falls into two different perspectives. And it's either that it goes with the dominant ideologies within society, all right? And that is the set of social values, ideas, beliefs, feelings, and representations that we live by. So every single person has an ideology, whether or not it's something you choose to ascribe to or something that you just inherently follow. We all have an ideology, a viewpoint on life. But media either plays into that, or media tries to deliberately cause a stir. So like this ad here with this Burger King advert, they deliberately trying to stir. They're deliberately trying to make people say, oi, what's going on here? And make little boys snicker in the corner and, upset the parents of the 5-year-olds and what have you. And it's that media should not aim to offend, but shock tactics, we know, are often what get people to actually do something and, talk about a product or, start a conversation about events that are happening around them. So when we are looking at our ideology, we've got to think about how the media is either reflecting the common ideologies within society, or maybe trying to push those boundaries, or maybe trying to give a different perspective. Because obviously, depending where you are and your point of framework will influence your ideology and how you will interact with the media. So, for example, in South Africa, we have a very, South African ideology. Again, I'll give you an example. My nephew, my mom said to my nephew this morning, we'll be having dinner now. Now, obviously, as the South Africans, we all understand that that means in a while. But my poor nephew, being 7 years old, thought it meant that he had to be up and to the table right this second. And it's such a small and menial example, but it actually speaks volumes to the South African ideology that we have ascribed different meanings to these words and these phrases. And it's that we have this different perspective on time, so, our African time. And it means that the media we choose to engage with, we are, in almost all circumstances, we'll deliberately engage with media that shares a similar ideology to what we believe. So if you are pro-vaccination, you're not going to be reading medical journals all the time about being anti-vaccination. But the idea is, within media, because we don't want bias, we should always educate ourselves to the other side of the argument. But in general, we tend to follow the stuff that follows our same ideologies. So if you have a particular belief system, if you are religious in some way, you're not going to read stuff that goes against your religion in terms of just causing upset for you. You might read it for education purposes and to reaffirm your own beliefs, but it just means you have to, think about what is going on around us. So our ideology and the ideology of the media is meant to be representative of as many different groups as possible, but again, media will very much reflect those who are willing to pay for the products, and those they've got to follow the trends of society. Okay, does that make sense in terms of ideology? Cool. All right, then, okay, sorry, there's still two other things I just need to mention tonight. We won't have long tonight, but it's just I forgot that this has got more another section which I forgot about, as in temporarily forgot about, because I've been looking through so many different slides today. All right, so hegemony is the other thing that we need to be aware of. Okay, and what hegemony is all about is that we have a dominant idea influencing our perceptions. So, for example, when I don't know about you guys, but growing up on Disney movies and what have you, generally it is the focus of the the princess that needs to be saved by Prince Charming to succeed within life. So then they become the princess or what have you. So just here for the examples, as a woman, your political worth is reduced to your marriageability. For Cinderella here, if you're beautiful enough, you may be able to escape your terrible living conditions by getting a wealthy man to fall for you. Belle, appearances don't matter. What counts is that your heart, unless you're a girl, then you've got to be beautiful, and it's got to be in your name. With Sleeping Beauty, Aurora, pretty girls don't even need to be alive to get some hot princely action. So it's that there is always a dominant idea that is influencing us. So again, it's that idea of whatever the most important ideology is and whatever the most prominent view is, that's what everyday media will show us. So if you look at this example here, it says war front, subjugating the enemy. So US military, Iraq. And it's saying that, they are, the belief is that in the US they are they are looking after the US citizen. They are, looking after the American way of life by being involved in the wars and, using force to get their way. Then, if you look on the US side of things, it says here, home front, subjugating public opinion. And here, USA, schools, not bombs, no war, no blood for oil, and it's the US propaganda machine. It's that they are influencing public opinion by what they're choosing to cover. So this is so true of all media, that whatever the the viewpoint is of that particular media organization, they will then show that viewpoint. So whoever's paying the bills, whoever's running the organization, whatever it may be, they will often push that particular hegemony. So we need to be aware of that. We need to be aware that hegemony exists, and we need to make sure that we are trying to use as many different sources to ensure that everything makes sense around us. All right. You guys still with me as I rattle off? Okay. All right. The next thing I want to just speak to you guys about is called polysemy. All right. So polysemy is where you have a word or a saying with multiple meanings. So I don't know if you guys have watched Shrek. And Shrek and Donkey are walking through the field, and Ogre says, ogres are like onions. And Donkey's immediate reaction is, they stink. And he said, no, onions have layers. All right. And then Donkey carries on walking. He says, cake. Everybody loves cake. And it's that we can have words or phrases that have multiple meanings. So I'm sure you guys all know of Kit Kat. Sorry. Have a break. Have a Kit Kat. All right. And it's have a break as in stop and breathe and then eat some chocolate, but also because Kit Kats can be broken. All right, Dominique, I'm so with you. Everyone needs to watch Shrek. It's like a rite of passage being a child or an adult in some instances. So yeah, you'll have a break, have a Kit Kat. It's where a word can have a meaning to some. So if you say biltong, for South Africans, it's something amazing. For others, it's raw meat and it's disgusting. And how can we eat it? Even though they'll eat carpaccio and sushi. But it's that we can have a word or a phrase or an advert say one thing but mean something else. So there's multiple meanings to something. And the other thing that we need to be aware of is the concept of intertextuality. So for you guys, this should hopefully make sense, being students who are studying English and what have you. So McDonald's, it says to be, not to be, and in between what's for lunch. And it says solve lunch first. So who are they referring to in this ad, in this McDonald's ad? Who's this dude in silhouette? Shakespeare. There we go. All right. So the reason why this ad makes sense is because you understand who Shakespeare is, and you understand that Shakespeare he writes the statement to be, not to be, that is the question in Hamlet. And so they're borrowing the meaning and the text and the importance of that statement to go and, we all have those intrusive thoughts. What's for lunch? I'm hungry. So McDonald's is very clever. And then, if you had this ad up around by schools or at Shakespeare's home in the UK, what have you, it would hit home. People would know what they're referring to. So that is your intertextuality. And that's really important because often something only makes sense because of our intertextuality. All right. And if you don't have that context, if it doesn't make sense to you, the whole advert, the whole form of media loses its impact. All right. One more thing, guys, and then you're done. Okay. So the last thing is that media works on this idea of forms of expression. All right. So it's that different elements have different meanings to different people. So, for example, sport. Sport is actually part of, for a South African, for someone who, so let's say rugby, for example. If you're from the UK, if you're from New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, rugby is part of the culture. It's on Saturdays, getting together for a braai, having some beers, having get-together based on everyone getting around the TV and watching rugby, or going to one of the stadiums or what have you. It's actually part of our culture, but also it's a unifying part of our culture that if you think of your cricket, your cricket World Cups, your football World Cups, rugby World Cups, it's that certain cultures associate themselves with particular sports. Music is another good example. So if you think of like Lady Smith Black Mambazo, if you think of Jerusalema, the fact that that was a local song that was then the dance was done all around the world. You know, during COVID when we were feeling so isolated from one another, yet people were going and doing this dance, and it had a big impact. So it was showing the rest of the world part of our culture, but at the same time we were unifying each other based on that song. So often music is a unifying part of our society. And then architecture. Now, because we don't have major architectural buildings, we do have very, very important ones, but not as like historic as Europe and Asia and what have you. But your architecture is reflective of a time period. So if you go to certain areas, you'll see buildings that are reflective of the Art Deco period or of the 1800s or what have you. It's actually an expression of the culture of what's going on. For example, the F&B Stadium in Joburg, that is meant to look like a traditional uh, uh, geez, guys, my mind's going blank. A traditional vessel. So the communal vessel that's used at meals in a lot of African cultures, and it's about this unifying. We're all in this melting pot together. We're all part of the South African culture, and everyone coming together in that pot. So it's meant to be reflective of the multiple cultures within South Africa all coming to one, all to unify in this one place. And that was deliberate. The stadium in KZN, there's symbolism with the arch and the wavy roof. So it's that these different buildings actually have cultural significance. And then finally, our religion. So if we think about it, religion is in all forms of media. There's still predominant Christian perspective. If you think of all the films that are based on weddings and around the holidays and all that kind of stuff, there's still quite a prominent Christian perspective, but it's that religion is used as a means to unify and also to divide. So we have films based on different religions and different cultures. If you guys, if you haven't watched it, watch the film You People on Netflix, and it's about a black woman getting together with a Jewish man, and it's all about the different cultures. I don't know, what did you think of it, Sasha? It's very interesting in terms of its they don't want to say that that's what you people do, but yeah, it took me a while to get into it because you could feel the constant tension within the film, and that's why I think it was really good. It's one of those films that it makes you uncomfortable, but for a good reason, to make us think and get out of our viewpoint. And it's a Jewish family and a Muslim family coming together, and so it's not only a race thing, but a religious thing and the different cultures. And to me, it's such a good film that looks at culture and looks at it in a way that hasn't been done before. So that's why I thought it was actually a really current film and something that needed to be said, because those two different cultures are very different, but at the same time, there's a lot of unifying factors too. All right. Okay, so those are the main points that I want you to focus on when you're working through Learning Unit 4. Learning Unit 4 does come up quite prominently in the POE. So if you guys can start working through this content for Learning Unit 4, start looking at these things, start thinking of examples. So when you're working through the material, think of some examples, think of how these different things come up in your everyday life, so that and in media that you see, so that you can start getting some stuff together. So when I start going through the POE, it all is going to make sense. All right. Any questions from you two? that's it from me tonight, guys. Have a great evening, and I'll chat to you soon.